She went under the wheels.
How perfected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Gabe.
And in today's episode, we talk about David Cronenberg's latest feature, Crimes of the Future. I was going to go with something more detailed and, like, clever, but I don't have anything like that on me. So, yeah. So, Crimes of the Future, Gabe, do you want to give us, like, a briefest of synopsis before we get into our ratings?
Okay, I'll try. For a movie that's only 90 minutes, a synopsis would take 90 minutes.
That's true.
So in the future, things have sort of decayed past a point of no return, where the whole world is like just this bombed out shithole, and it's causing people to become mutants, essentially. Like, they're going through what's called advanced evolution syndrome, where, people are mutating, like pain is disappearing, and other bodily functions are being removed or replaced by just these kind of changes forced upon them by, industrial and environmental and technological calamities. So Viggo Mortensen plays a performance artist named Saul Tenser, who has this advanced evolution syndrome that causes his body to produce new organs all the time against his will. And he and his kind of romantic partner, Caprice, have these shows where she tattoos and then surgically removes these organs. And it's like this kind of entertainment is really popular as society has become more and more debauched. And then because like there's all these people growing new organs, there's a group called the National Organ Registry that's supposed to register all new originally human organs that these people develop, and those people are super weird. And then there's like a shadowy government that builds all these machines that are supposed to make people's lives easier, but they also go around like murdering people. Like, there's a chair that's supposed to help you eat breakfast because people can't eat anymore. And then there's like a revolutionary group that is like, well, we're basically running out of food and there's more industrial waste than anything, so we need to evolve in order to eat industrial waste. So they go through like this surgery that allows them to eat toxic chemicals, essentially. And one of their leaders has a son who ends up getting murdered, who was born naturally with the ability to eat toxic garbage. So all these characters just sort of get thrown into a pot and mashed together, where Saul Tenser and Caprice end up, getting the body of this kid, and the revolutionary group sort of commissions them to do a show where they'll do an autopsy of the kid and reveal that, basically reveal the next stage of human evolution to the world. Meanwhile, there's this police unit that's trying to shut everything down and keep everything kind of hush-hush and under control. And then there's Kristen Stewart just skulking about being weird. And that's the movie. That's the whole thing, I guess.
What did you think of Crimes of the Future?
It's like a low witness, actually. Because, it's weird and it's frustrating. And it introduces so much and then leaves so much of it hanging. But, well, positives first. The movie's really funny. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, I'm pretty
I was
sure,
laughing pretty hard in a lot of it.
Yeah, like I was giggling the whole time, and I think it is supposed to be a comedy, even though it's not billed as such. But it is genuinely pretty funny. And like the design of the world's really basic, but it's very striking. Where everything is just like dilapidated and in decay. And a lot of the ideas it brings forth are interesting. I guess for the negatives, like it has a similar problem to a lot of Cronenberg's early movies, where it's kind of this. It's a 90-minute slow burn, which, if you do the math, means not much happens. And as is the case with a lot of his earlier movies, especially like Scanners or Videodrome, there's a lot of those stories tend to have a lot of like different layers of stuff going on, where there's like various groups working against each other and like all these conspiracies and things, and various people have various complex plots that they're trying to enact that end up going sideways because they come into conflict with each other. But you know, you only really get the build up, and then when it comes time for the payoff, either the payoff doesn't show up or it's rushed incredibly fast, and you just sort of stumble across to the ending, which is sort of kind of what happens here. Sorry, what?
Or sort of anticlimactic.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I actually think I think I'm probably going to be alone in this. I actually liked the ending. Yeah.
I actually, the movie had another like 40 minutes left. I thought it was gonna be like Everything Everywhere All at Once, where they had fake credits.
I think Austin said that too. I think you guys agreed on that. Like, oh, it's just gonna end with like Viggo Mortensen finally being able to swallow. Oh, okay. But sorry to derail you.
He doesn't need the chair anymore. Okay, one of the best bits of physical comedy in the movie is that there's this like ergonomic eating chair that is supposed to like, you know, tilt your body in various ways to help you chew and digest, because I guess in the future that becomes very difficult. But it doesn't work. Like, Viggo Mortensen still has a really tough time eating, and then when you actually see the chair, like, it just beats the shit out of whoever is sitting in it.
So I always think I love that, because I remember I was thinking of Joey Chestnut the whole time. I can't watch professional eating. Like, I just can't do it. It's just too disgusting to me. With them dunking their like hot dog buns in water and shoving it down. But one of the sports science talked about like Joey Chestnut and how he eats. Like, he throws his head backwards so that the food can get into him faster. And then, like, he jumps up and down when swallowing so that it can help move the food down his esophagus. And then he does, like, this little shake so that the food can, like, go into empty places and stuff like that. That's what I was thinking of with this chair. I was like, it's the Joey Chestnut chair.
That's so disgusting.
It is. But I appreciate, like, okay, first off, I think this is a witness, because I really enjoyed it. But I have a caveat. Like, this movie is disgusting, which is funny because I'm not like the most squeamish person. There's a certain level I can handle, but like, there's so much mutilation in this movie that I was kind of like, all right, I'm glad I didn't need any popcorn with this one.
Well,
here.
Honestly, the mutilation isn't even that bad. The grossest thing in the whole movie is the opening scene where that kid's eating a wastebasket.
The thing for me was when the woman was doing the performance art and she was cutting her face, and then she like walked over and talked to Leah Sadu, and I was just like, no. I know it's all fake. I know it's all prosthetics. I know, but like, there was something about that part of it, and like the guy sewing his eyes and mouth shut with the ears. I was just like,
see, I wanted more of that. I wanted like more of that ear guy or things like that.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that, but like, I know that there are people out there who they're fine with that. That was kind of where it was getting too far for me. I don't know why. That's why I preface it with, there's some stuff like that in here that people won't necessarily like, but I am able to look past that because look past it in the sense of like I appreciate all of that because it adds to the world. And like I agree with you, it is fun to see all of those performance art type stuff, but you have to be prepared for it because it goes probably not far enough for some people, like some crazy masochists like you out there. But like I think when they say like, oh, this is a divisive film, like I think that's where that and sort of bits of pieces of the ambiguity come in.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like I think the ambiguity is probably more disturbing than anything actually shown on screen. I mean, when Cronenberg said like people are going to be walking out in the first 15 minutes, I got so excited. I was like, yes, yes. It's actually not that bad. I mean, what's interesting is, you know, obviously Cronenberg now has the advantage of CGI, which he didn't have 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the result is kind of mixed because, you know, some of the big like gore, gross out bits of it are, you know, they're well done enough, but like you can kind of tell it's an effect. And I mean, it's also, to Cronenberg's credit, it's filmed in a way that's not super, I guess, exploitative, for lack of a better word. Like it's filmed in a way that he's not like kind of shoving your face in gore. It's just like, oh, it's sort of incidental to what's going on. Yeah. But to that end, like going back to some of his movies from the 80s where the special effects were 100% practical, you know, or I think with this, they were partially practical and then enhanced with CGI in a lot of cases, which is like basically lazy practical effects.
That chair looked so fake. The Sark unit.
The chair
so
was
fake.
The best. The chair was the best effect of the whole movie because that was totally real. But I'm talking about like the surgical crap.
Yeah. Like the incisions clearly were digital.
Yeah.
But then sometimes when they would like prod things, like it's like surgical cuts, fake, inner organs, some of them real.
It's a mix, you know, but it's like it doesn't have that Rick Baker-esque, you know, mark of quality that Cronenberg's movies from the 80s have, where it's like Videodrome, you know, one of the effects is not very good, but for the rest of them are all very gross. Same thing with Scanners. Like the effects in both those movies are appropriately disgusting, just because they had to be physically made, and then, you know, you have to try and sell that to an audience.
They didn't use enough petroleum jelly on the stuff in this movie. They're a little light on it. I feel like that's the thing, is like, because to me, like the chair, the mechanics of it were really good, but then if you look at the actual, like, it's like kind of like a skeleton looking thing, but it looks like like a plastic casting of a skeleton thing that was also not necessarily painted well. So I think they needed more petroleum jelly in general.
Well, it's funny. Austin was saying we should make a short about the chair. And I was saying, like, we could probably go to like some, you know, like academic, like med school supply place and just get a bunch of spines from those anatomical models and build the chair, because it's basic. That's what the chair looks like. It looks like it's built out of spines from, you know, like medical school dummies.
Oh man. Yeah, the chair was fake. So I don't know if I said it. I think Solid Witness. The only problem I really had with the movie, and I think the reason why it ended up feeling so so hard to understand. There's probably other underlying things, but for me, it's because the detective that they got does a great job acting. I could not understand half of the words he said. And when I was watching Viggo Mortensen, I think he felt the same.
Oh man, well, yeah. They use a lot of local Greek actors for the movie, but the guy who plays the detective, His Greek accent's very strong. That said, the scene where he's first introduced, I didn't understand the first couple sentences he said, but once it's like kind of once you tune your ear to an accent, then you can hear everything just fine.
Okay.
So like after he said like, you know, a sentence or two, I was like, okay, I got what his accent is. I know what he's saying now. So I can understand that frustration. I mean, the other thing, it's like the performances throughout the whole movie, except for Viggo, are insanely wooden or caricature-ish, which I think adds to the humor of it. But like Kristen Stewart's character is like, it's like Bella Swan times 1,000. Like all of the weird nervous tics and stuff that people make fun of in Twilight, this is that taken to a whole new extreme you didn't even think was possible. And that it's pretty funny, but it's off-putting at first, and then it's hilarious. And a lot of the performances are like that, where it's like the two repair women who from Life Assist Corp or whatever the fuck it's called, who may also be shadowy government agents. Their performances are also weirdly wooden because they sound like, I don't know, they almost sound like teenagers giving interviews for a documentary than characters in a movie. But then, and like even Léa Seydoux's performance it's played pretty straight, but it comes off like the artifice of it is very apparent. And then with the detective, it's kind of the same thing, where it's like it's partly his performance, partly the way that the camera and the editing frames it all, because I'm sure Cronenberg intended this somehow. Like his performance is also incredibly, like, it feels very artificial. It feels very fake. And then on top of that, he has this outrageous Greek accent.
I will say
it's tough.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
I will say, like, the movie kind of threw me for a loop because the detective sits down with the two National Organ Registry people, and then they just decide to get into a philosophical conversation about humanity, and I was like, okay, this is a weird thing for the detective to like dive into.
Well, the whole movie does that though, because the two repair ladies have they're talking to no one about like the meaning of art and the artistic process or something in the middle of like a party.
Yeah. So there's David Cronenberg's writing is a little interesting.
Well, so the thing is like, have you seen Crash?
No, I haven't.
This movie is basically Crash, because it's about violent performance art and the evolution of humanity into something disturbing and unrecognizable, an evolution that's forced on it by technology. But the way Crash handles it, I think, is better. Crash has like a full, complete plot. It doesn't just like suddenly end. And like, you know, as sort of weird and distant and vacant and alien as everyone is in Crash, they're a whole lot more natural than in this. Like in Crimes of the Future, everyone acts cartoonishly to kind of show how inhuman they are. In Crash, everyone acts disaffected to show how inhuman they are. Like they still act like people, they just act like soulless people. In this, they act like cartoon characters.
Well, I also think it's got to be kind of hard because, like, in this movie, you have to pretend like you don't feel pain. And I appreciate the efforts they went to try and get that across.
Yeah.
But, you know, that has to be hard. Also, like, you know, Cronenberg may be kind of losing his touch a little bit on acting and that sort of thing, because, like, Path to the Stars, which was the movie he did before this, is like also kind of ridiculous. So he's kind of been enjoying this sort of dark comedy / like creepy sense.
Well, I mean, that was a criticism of Cronenberg for a long time in the 70s and 80s, is that people would always say, like, why are the performances in his movies so weird? He doesn't know how to direct actors. Everyone's so wooden, blah, 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 blah. But it actually, like, for some of those movies, it actually works. Like, Scanners, not so much. The acting's just kind of not great. But, like, Videodrome, everyone acts very weirdly. Like, they act very unnatural. And it works to the movie's benefit.
Yeah. I mean,
to this, I think it's more mixed. Like, part of it works to the movie's benefit, but it doesn't. Like, Kristen Stewart's performance is such a double-edged sword, where it's like, it's so funny and lends, like, so much comedy to the movie, and, like, I don't know, it's like one of those things, like, you can't look away from it. And then the other thing that's hilarious is, like, Viggo Mortensen's character is like like of how weird she is.
Yeah. I did actually appreciate that scene. Also, like, that
scene is so good.
Like,
it's so uncomfortable.
It's great because, like, there's the lead up and kind of the ramp up to it is all done in, like, one long take of, like, things getting progressively more like obviously she's, like, getting really hot and he's getting really weird. Like, he's like, these are weird vibes. And so his expression is constantly like, what? And slowly gets more, like, you know, like enhances it as she's getting closer and closer and more, like, turned on in her own awkward way. So I really appreciated that scene. Like, that I appreciated.
Like, that whole, it's one, because you're right, it is one shot from beginning to end.
Well, it ends up cutting in. It ends up cutting
like,
into,
at the
like,
very
help.
end.
Yeah, at the end. But yeah.
Yeah, that whole scene is great because it like, even it starts off with, like, he's just weirded out from the other guy from the National Organ Registry.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'm gonna go home now, and then she just appears out of nowhere, and he's like, Jesus Christ, what the hell's wrong with you? And then yeah, she goes on this whole rant in, like, Bella Swan times 1,000 awkward mode. And the whole time, like, Viggo's just cringing harder and harder and harder and harder as the scene progresses. It's so fucking funny.
And it works. Like, that's the thing is,
yeah.
Like, yes, Kristen Stewart leans into sort of, like, this very weird caricature of what she was famous for, I guess, in the 2000s. But it works really well. Like, it's really effective. You do feel, like, uncomfortable by her, and, like, she's both timid but also, like, when she needs to turn on and she's like, oh, I can understand why this is so, you know, like, pleasurable or amazing. It's like, okay, yeah, like, you're weird and you would say something like that, but I appreciate it. Okay, all right. And, like, you can tell, like, you know, she conveys enough that she's, like, highly turned on by, like, pushing 70-year-old Viggo Mortensen.
I know, she's like, madly in love with him. And Viggo, I think, like, at first was like, oh, you know, she's kind of cute. But then as soon as, like, he's actually alone in a room with her, he's like, good Lord, you're weird.
I love his line at the end. He's just like, okay, he's 63. Never mind. I'm being mean to him. But he's just like, I was never good at the old sex. I was like, oh, that's funny. I don't know why.
That was a really good line.
So I do want to talk more about the plot, but if we do, we have to put on a spoilers thing, because I thought it was done awkwardly but interestingly. Like, I think I understood all of the major beats of what was going on and what was happening.
Yeah.
But it does leave a lot of questions in the beginning. Like, where are we going? Why are we doing this?
Well, it's also, like, I think it was done interestingly, but it leaves so many questions at the end. Like, why were the two women going around assassinating people with drills?
Like, specifically with drills?
Yeah. Well, just why the whole thing? Why drills? Why assassinations? Who are they? Like, because they assassinate other people with drills, not just, spoiler alert. We're doing spoilers now. Not just Scott Speedman's character.
Okay, so I'm going to answer these questions non-linearly, but the only other person that I know for certain that they killed was the plastic surgeon, right?
Yeah, the inner beauty pageant judge or
yeah.
advocate.
So they killed. My understanding is they killed him because I was with you. I was like, well, why? What was the point of killing him? they killed him, one, to set up that these people are, murderers, and two, because he was performing the plastic surgeries to allow these people to start eating plastic. Because the only...
he was the guy who was doing their surgeries.
That's my understanding.
Oh, I didn't get that at all. Okay.
That's because I was reflecting on it, and I was like, well, why would they want to? But that one person is like, the one person that Viggo talks to at the show with the ears, she's like, oh, you're about to make a political statement. And he comes in and he's like, I don't do any politics stuff. I'm just like the inner beauty pageant person. But then they said that they have to have highly specialized, like the plastic eaters have to have highly specialized surgeries in order to be allowed to eat the plastic stuff.
Well, so but I never connected that it was Dr. What's-His-Face that did it.
Yeah, that's the only reason I think that. And again, that's my thought. That's my understanding of it. The only reason I think that is because of the precision in which they need the surgeries done.
I guess. I mean, yeah, to me, because I didn't make that connection at all, it was just like, okay, they assassinate this guy. I don't know why, but maybe it'll make sense later, because that's how movies work. They introduce a question, and then later they answer it.
It definitely felt like there were a couple of deleted scenes left on the cutting room floor that we needed for context.
Yeah, and then like it never gets addressed, so I'm like, wait, why did they kill him? I don't understand. It's funny. I was thinking about that just now, because like it's sometimes frustrating to watch movies with people who like ask questions, and it's like, bro, this is how movies work. They introduce something to make you ask a question, and then later they're gonna answer it. Just watch the movie.
I've been sitting there with people who are like, well, why are they doing that? I'm like, watch the movie.
Watch the movie. This is how you tell a story, you fucking like.
I will say though, like my wife is pretty good at like she'll ask me a question about the movie, and then I'll be like, blah, blah, blah. And she'll be like, well, why didn't they just do this? And I'm like, one, got cinema dinged. And two, that's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. Those are the ones that are harder for me to parse. I'm like, I don't know.
I'm one of those people who just like, please do not talk to me during a movie.
It depends on the crowd I'm with, but yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. And then like also I'll just take so much of the movie for granted that someone's like, well, why didn't they just do this? Like, oh, well, why didn't they change Luke Skywalker's last name in Star Wars? And it's like, good question. Now you got me thinking.
Well, I don't know. When people ask me that, I'm just like, why don't you do a job you actually like? And like, I don't know, life doesn't always make sense, okay?
Why isn't his name Luke Lars, man? You know what? No, we don't.
You know what? I don't
watch the movie and enjoy it. Yeah. That's what I had to come to with all the like CinemaSins dingy stuff where it's like, we're going to nitpick this movie to death. It's like, you know what? Sometimes they just make storytelling choices for dramatic purposes. Just let it be. All right? Just let it be. Like, it's fine. Like, yeah, the Night's Watch had that giant scythe that could kill wildlings if they were climbing the wall. Just let it be. It's cool. Sometimes that's the answer. It's cool and it's fun, and that's sometimes what we want out of movies. All right, Gabe? That's why we have Top Gun, Gabe. That's why. I'm just kidding. So yeah, that was as far as Crimes of the Future, that was the biggest question I also had coming out of the theater. But I think that was like the major question, because like the movie opens, which I also kind of like how David Cronenberg's movies will open with a scene that seems to have no context in the rest of the movie, and then eventually it will. Like, you haven't seen A History of Violence, but Eastern Promises opens with that random murder of a guy in a barber shop, and then like a girl who's pregnant and her water breaks when she's at the pharmacy. Yep. And it's like, okay, well, I wonder how all of these things are connected. And slowly he does start to kind of either loosely or directly connect the threads. So this movie opens with the kid, and the mom is like, don't eat anything you find because... And it's like, oh, well, if he eats like a frog or a worm, we don't realize this until later, but if he eats like a worm, it will kill him because he can't eat regular food. His body can't do that. and then he starts eating the plastic bin, and she like executes him, which I think is the first marker where he was like, if people aren't going to want to watch this because a mother literally like suffocates her child
who just ate a dirty, nasty looking waste
bin, yeah, which I do want to talk about the setting of the movie, but yeah, it's a dirty, nasty waste bin, and he's like excreting this like weird white fluid from his mouth, and it's just like, this is getting gross. So you're like, okay, well, I guess that makes sense why, but it's like, well, why is he eating the waste bin? Is he just like weird? Can he actually process and eat it? And the truth is, like, he can.
Yeah.
And then they, zip over to Viggo Mortensen and Lea Seydoux as they're like prepping their next show, and it's weird because it's like people like to make fun of performance art, which I think this movie kind of leans into. Like,
this movie totally does.
Yeah, performance art is stupid. All of those ears are fake. Only 2 of them listen. He's a better dancer than a conceptualist.
Lea Seydoux' character kind of has her head up her ass for the whole movie.
And like I love how like they have that scene later on where like, Viggo Mortensen's character, it doesn't seem like he might be relatable, but he's like, oh, I mean, I want to. So the idea is like, what is humanity? Like, are we, if our organs start to evolve, are we still human, or do we become something else? And Viggo Mortensen is constantly fighting evolution because he's like, any new organ I have, I want it removed because it feels a little less human when I have it. But he's also like, look, if I can turn a quick buck on by having these surgeries and in front of everyone, so be it.
Well, I think the story's more consequentialist than that. It's not so much what does it mean to be human. It's more that, like, what is the modern world doing to humanity?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is it stripping our humanity away and changing us into something else?
And yeah, like, what effect does that have on us? Because we already see, like, because people stopped feeling pain, then all of a sudden they're like, well, why bother washing our hands? So I like how in most people's mind, the sort of like sterilization of the world makes the world a cleaner place. And David Cronenberg is like, the sterilization of the world makes the world a disgusting place to live.
It's the dirtiest place ever because there's no reason to clean now.
Like, what's the point? We can't feel any pain. Can people die of things aside from like being murdered?
Well, the guy said infections have gone away.
Okay, so like they can't get infected, they don't feel any pain, and so like the only way that they can get their rocks off is by like seeing people get dismembered, and they get like pleasure by it. And all of that, I think, is
dismembered.
Or being dismembered, yeah. Ugh. But I find it really interesting, like, that I never would have thought about that. So I appreciate David Cronenberg for those ideas. And like a good David Cronenberg movie, it reminded me a lot of, did you see Existence?
No.
Okay. So in Existence, basically, Jennifer Jason Leigh basically just like fingers a controller, because the other thing about Cronenberg's production design, one, it's disgusting, and two, all of the sort of like main mechanical devices are organic matter.
Yeah.
For some reason. They don't really go into it, but I appreciate that. I think that's kind of clever.
That's true. I mean, the controller for the autopsy machine that Viggo and Lea Seydoux use is very fleshy.
At one point, it looked like a frog. I was like, why do they have this toad? And then he started pressing the buttons. I was like, oh, that's why. Also, like, as an aside, I also liked how they go through the process of like, all right, well, how are we going to put this thing on, like, in like a filmmakery way where like Lea Seydoux's like laying in the bed naked, I was like, all right, or in the sark naked, and I was like, all right, and then it turns into like a really weird sex scene, and I was like, all right, Cronenberg, like this is what I expect from you. But like they're kind of going through the motions of like, well, how are we going to put this on, and peeling back the curtain of like, as creatives, how do we put on, like, how do we put on a show? How do people put on a show? Mm-hmm. And granted, because like what they're doing is still putting on a show, And so I always like scenes like that. And of course, it goes from like, how do we put on the show to, all right, we're having sex inside the Sark while a machine cuts us up. And I was like, yeah, okay, it's fine. It's funny. I thought that was really funny. But yeah, even like that machine, like the thing that splits apart. I know I'm going all over the place, but the thing that splits apart to open it up is also like these two sort of like Halloween style spatulas that are made of like fake looking bone stuff. So that's why I said like the production design needed more, petroleum jelly, because like those things looked fake too.
Yeah,
like, all of that stuff looked fake.
You needed more goo.
Yes, it wasn't gooey enough. I also feel bad because like I think Roger Ebert would have appreciated the fact that at one point in the movie, Leia Seydoux like unzips one of the wounds that Viggo Mortensen has and like goes down on it. I was like, Roger Ebert would have liked this.
His stomach zipper.
His stomach zipper, and then it turning into like a fetish, like in real time. I was like,
I know the delivery of the dialogue in that scene is so weird, but the dialogue itself is pretty funny.
Is it? I'm trying to remember what the... Yeah.
She's like, oh, so you don't need me anymore. You just have a zipper now. And he's like, well, he's like, a zipper isn't art. It's just functional. And then she like, opens up the zipper and starts going down on it. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, zippers do have a, what is it? Zippers have an appeal on their own or something like that. And then he's like, be careful not to leak anything.
Oh, it's so good. It's like, it's so fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. Aside from some of the mutilation stuff that I thought was like, just like, yeah. But anyway, so like the kid you learn later the kid naturally eats plastic, and it's the first kid that's born that can do that, whereas everyone else, they start feeling like they can't eat food, and then they have to get these surgeries when they kind of like realize that the only way forward is to eat plastic, because their bodies are developing in a way where they won't be able to eat anything. Like they're having problems swallowing, which also, as someone who kind of went through that maybe like 15 years ago, where like I was having problems swallowing because of some allergic reaction that I wasn't sure of, that also made me like super uncomfortable while watching. Viggo Mortensen having trouble swallowing, and like that was just, we talked about it in Everything Everywhere, where like the paper cut thing was like, oh, like that also kind of brought back like some memories for me. So I'm sure.
Viggo's performance is pretty good, where he just like grabs his own throat and jerks it around.
Yeah, just to make sure
the
the food goes down.
It's a more extreme version of Joey Chestnut. Just grabs his own trachea and starts wiggling it back and forth. It's like watching Tom Kenny do the SpongeBob.
Oh, where he's laughing and he grabs his does he grab his Adam's apple?
Throat and like waves it around. I'm like, Jesus, it looks so painful.
God, I can't, like, it's just nuts to me, like people who do that and like, isn't that fun? Isn't that a clever trick? And it's like, yeah, it is. Now you're gonna have to do that same thing for like 8 hours a day for the next like 20 years. Like, oh no. Let me get Adam's apple surgery every 5 years just to make sure everything's put in place, like car maintenance. So
get
anyway,
your throat rotated.
The unexposed part that isn't like pressed in because I'm slowly grabbing my throat harder and harder every time. Fluff my Adam's
We got to
apple.
make sure it wears evenly. You need to have your throat rotated. Cronenberg, I'm giving you great ideas here.
Cronenberg's like, oh, don't worry, it's coming. Well, apparently he had this script for like 20 years, and he just was like slowly didn't. He was like, there's no market for it, and then there was.
Nick Cage was supposed to be Viggo Mortensen's character.
God, can you imagine?
That would have been so funny.
Watching him get off to like having like surgical equipment go inside of him. Like, all right.
You have a habit of not telling me things.
Can you imagine Ralph Fiennes in the main role?
No.
Apparently he was attached to star after Nicolas Cage dropped out.
What the?
Can you imagine? He's just like, very good. Please put an incision on me. Like it's like proper English, and then Voldemort, both, just like every other scene, all the way.
Oh, we didn't get into like how they deliver 30 plot twists in 10 seconds.
Right, because I was trying to explain like why the ending felt satisfying to me, and I never got I never got it. So anyway, basically, long story short, well, actually, let's go into the plot twists here, because it's tied into why I think the ending was satisfying.
Finish setting it up. So the kid Brecken,
so
he's dead, but he was able to naturally eat plastic.
Right, and so the plastic eaters were like, okay, we were going to use Brecken as like, this is the advancement of this is how we're going to evolve. The world has put it in us that we can clean up the world by eating plastic. So they're like environmentalists, even though like they eat the plastic and then they just leave the wrapper sitting around. So that doesn't seem very environmentally
Wouldn't
cautious.
they also be able to eat the wrapper?
Yeah, like Cronenberg, we're poking cinema dings all over your movie. Come on, man, do better. So they decide. So like, the big. I mean, I don't. Oh, I think the thing that was the most interesting to me was that like Scott Speedman was kind of like, describing problems that Viggo Mortensen was having, where Viggo Mortensen was having trouble swallowing. He wasn't sleeping right. His bed, which is also like this organic creature, and like it rotates to him, I think, to help him sleep. Like, that thing is also not necessarily working right. And Viggo Mortensen.
So in a world where people don't feel pain, Viggo's in pain all the time. That's another thing.
And does he just like not realize it's pain?
No, he knows, because he's in pain all the time, and that's why he has the weird bed. It's to help like relieve that so he can sleep.
Oh, I thought he was just uncomfortable, because she was like, "What is it? What's the sensation?" And he's like,
"Well, the thing is, like, if you're in pain all the time, I think at some point you just get used to it.
Ignore it.
So like he's just like, I'm fine.
And he dresses up like a superhero half the time, or like a ninja with his hood and everything. He's like, I'm cold. I'm always too cold. I thought that was interesting too. Like, not to go too far off track, but like Viggo Mortensen's character in general, I thought was like really kind of cool and interesting, aside from like the weird performance art stuff, which I thought was goofy, but appropriate. So like, yeah, he is always in pain, and Scott Speedman's describing like similar effects, and he gets him to do a live autopsy, which no one has seen, because like the Sark units were made, and then all of a sudden autopsies stopped, and like the people who created beds, which like the two people who are sort of like the people who repair the beds and the chairs and stuff get like super turned on with the Sark unit, which I thought was also kind of funny. Sark for sarcophagus, I'm guessing, because that's what you put dead people in. So yeah, Viggo Mortensen agrees to do it, and there's like a lot of controversy around it. And of course, this all happens like 50 minutes into the movie. An hour into the movie is like finally when the plot starts kicking in, which I think is a choice, and also is like probably one of the reasons why it feels so confusing in the beginning. But the plot twist, well, what plot twist do you want to start with?
Well, let's go in order. Okay. So Tensor and Caprice do the autopsy of Brecken.
Oh, Tensor's also a
undercover cop.
He's an undercover cop.
Yeah, so he works with the Greek cop, who's kind of his handler, and gives him, and they give each other information throughout this whole movie. So they're trying to like discern the motives of various, groups and people doing illegal activities.
Yeah. And so that's why he ends up like going to the registry to start registering his organs, because he starts registering his organs so that they can use it as a benchmark to see how humans are evolving and what to start calling these organs. So the National Organ Registry has all of his organs, and sort of like to kind of also establish a museum. And he's working with the undercover cop, and he also gets involved with the inner organ beauty pageant. So they put like a camera inside of his stomach so that they can like I guess take pictures of new organs that he makes. and it's heavily implied that no matter what happens, he will still win. And then they decide to do the autopsy, although Lea Seydoux has very strong misgivings about it. I guess because it's a child.
So they do the autopsy of the kid, and his whole digestive system that allows him to digest plastic has been tattooed the way that Caprice tattoos Tenser's organs, which is basically saying that, like, they've been planted there. Like, they're not, like, the kid wasn't born able to do that.
Okay. That's part of the part I was confused. I thought that they had gone into the boy and replaced his organs with all of Tenser's organs.
No. So
okay.
I think they were just tattooed that way. And then Scott Speedman, the boy's father, has like a meltdown, goes outside, and is murdered by the two repair ladies, claiming that, like, that's not how it was supposed to be. Then Saul meets up with the cop and is like, yeah, the kid was full of tattooed organs. That was really weird. And the cop says, well, actually, the kid was born able to digest plastics naturally. And Saul's like, what? And he's like, yeah, you see, Kristen Stewart is actually a undercover cop as well. And we had her go on the inside, rip out the kid's digestive system, and replace it with a fake one so that people wouldn't believe it was real. And then Saul's like, why would you do that? And he's like, well, we can't have it getting out that, like, this is the next stage of human evolution. We have to keep this a secret. We can't have anyone know. And so Saul gets really mad and just kind of leaves. They also, like, talk about how, you know, now that Scott Speedman's been assassinated, the cop doesn't know who did it, or claims not to know. Now his group will have a martyr, and that'll make them even more, like, fanatical about what they're doing. So yeah, like, all this happens in like 5 minutes, I feel like. Especially, like, the whole Kristen Stewart was an undercover cop too the whole time twist just came out of nowhere, and I'm like, what the fuck?
I don't know. I'm okay with that one. Like, I actually, and then at the very end, he's struggling to eat, and finally, Lea Seydoux comes over, gives him the plastic bar, and he's like, I'm finally ready to try it, and eats it, and is happy because he has, the way I see it is, like, his body is evolving faster than everyone else's. Mm-hmm. And so his body has evolved to the point where now he naturally, like, the things that were growing in him naturally digest plastic.
Well, yeah, he's the original, so he's been fighting against it the whole time by having these organs removed. And part of the plot of this movie is, like, because they're trying to figure out the next show and figure out what to do with the autopsy, he's not having any organs extracted for a while, so they have an extra long time to build up inside of him.
And they build faster.
Yeah, and they build faster each time. So yeah, the plastic eaters, they turn their plastic into these purple candy bars that will kill anyone who's not able to digest them, but is nutritious for them, I guess. And yeah, Saul's able to eat it, and he, like, cries in relief that, like, his pain and everything is finally gone.
Mm-hmm. So good. I really like that ending. Like, I really like the idea, like, no matter what they're trying to do to stop the tide of change, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's evolution. It's change. It's just going to happen. And, like, they tried to stop it by sabotaging this boy, but now Viggo Mortensen's body has done it naturally, and everyone knows that he always gets organs removed. Well, if this is what happened when he clearly didn't necessarily get it inserted into him because he doesn't want anything new in him. So it's the natural evolution. So I liked that ending. I like how no matter what they do to stop it, it's going to happen anyway. And also sort of like the way that Viggo Mortensen's perspective of it changes over time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Of, like, I want it removed because I don't want to be the new thing. And then it's like, but it happened to you anyway.
Yeah. All right, Matthew, Mr. Themes are for book reports. What is this movie about? What does it mean?
You can't. The river flows swiftly in one direction, and you can't change it. You can only go along with it. I think it's a commentary on that idea of like evolution, but it also kind of talks about how we spend so much time trying to stop things that will progress naturally, stop the people who are trying to force things to happen, that we always forget that in an objective scientific way, things will just change. You know, like especially as far as evolution or time goes, there are those people who will try and force it. There are those people who won't, but things will happen regardless of whether we want to interfere in them or not. Mm-hmm. And so embracing the change, maybe not like overly embracing it, but just sort of Viggo Mortensen coming to terms with it is important. I also think it's like a commentary on like the way that we change as a human, because they stopped feeling pain. They stopped having infections and things like that. And yet no one batted an eye. No one felt like they're less human because they don't feel pain. But if you start eating plastic, it is a change. So how do you gauge those changes?
Yeah.
So kind of like the hypocrisy of that's inherent in humanity, I guess. I'm doing a bad job of addressing themes because themes are specific statements, and I'm just kind of saying like, this is what the movie is kind of trying to like ask the questions
that's,
of.
I think, more important than saying a theme. Like, you can't distill a theme into a statement, I don't think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's like, I think the movie is partially concerned with, you know, kind of the old Cronenberg concerns of like, the world is changing because of, like, humanity is changing the world through technology and, you know, industry and pollution and all this other stuff. So how is that going to end up changing us? Mm-hmm. You know, how does that, like in Crash or even in his son's movie, Possessor, like how does the modern world change people? Especially how does it take people's humanity away? Although I think this is more, optimistic than Crash or Possessor is. But also I think it's about, I mean, it seems to be a pretty heavy commentary on art and
that
Cronenberg's
too.
own process, where it's like, you know, like an artist whose whole thing is he produces organs and then has them removed. That could be, I mean, a lot of people who talk about like making any artwork, whether it's a painting or a movie or writing a novel, like they all describe it very similarly to that, where it's like you're taking out like a growth or a baby or something and giving it away. And it's like, it's not something that you create, it's something that almost like involuntarily just spills out of your insides. So it's a very visceral metaphor for that. I think the other stuff that's kind of interesting is, I think it's Léa Seydoux talks about how like, about pain and how like, you know, artists are people who transform pain into something else. Mm-hmm. And then they live in a world without pain and without infections or disease. And that world, instead of being like pristine and perfect, like you said, it's actually incredibly dirty and incredibly ugly. Like a world without pain, there's no beauty in it. It's all ugliness. A world without germs isn't clean. It's incredibly dirty. And then Viggo Mortensen is like the number one artist on planet Earth because he is the one person who does feel pain all the time. And that's literally what he makes his art out of, is these organs that are troubling him. Mm-hmm. But then the other thing, it's like how much of that is self-indulgent, how much of it is self-inflicted. Like if he just accepted the changes that were coming to him, he wouldn't have to be in pain all the time.
Yeah, it's also interesting because like, you know, he's like the I guess the pure distillation of this performance type art. And as the pure distillation of it, people know who he is, but they don't necessarily always come to his shows. They're not always sold out and things like that. Whereas there are these other people who are kind of hacks, and those hacks like get tons and tons more people to come in and talk about and stuff like that. Like the ear thing, it's like, oh yeah, he just has those ears on for a show. They don't actually hear anything. And yet when Viggo talks about it to Lea Seydoux later, he's like, it was sold out. I wish we could get those kinds of numbers so we'd have that kind of money, blah, blah, blah. The same with like the person whose face is mutilated. It's like, it's not because she feels any pain, but people like to get off on it, and they like to see like sort of, instead of seeing these things that are like pure and clean, like we're used to seeing like a normal looking face, it's like the mutilation makes the person more beautiful, because now if you mutilate yourself, you're damaging yourself, and it's through that damage that you're able to better express what you really feel. So like that sort of part on art is also interesting to me. Mm-hmm. Like where do we draw the line, if there is a line, and does it matter if there's a line or not?
Yeah. But it also is interesting that, like, you know, all of the anytime someone talks about art, what they say like always verges on nonsense.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how we sound a little bit. But yeah, but like that's, I'm fine with that. Any sort of self-expression can be seen as art, I guess.
Well, no, it's more like
according to Scott McCloud,
like Lea Seydoux is talking about like what art is and what it means. It's just like it's all just nonsense coming out of her mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I was gonna say, there were some other things about it's also interesting because like Viggo Mortensen tries to keep a really clean house. When we talk about the differences between the rest of the people, is like he tries to keep a clean house, he tries to keep his body as clean as possible, and things like that. Yeah. It's really interesting. I don't know. Howard Shore's music was real. Like as it started, I was like, huh, this feels different. Like I'm not used to Howard Shore doing this kind of music. Because normally his stuff is a lot more, like he has a couple of really strong themes, but it also plays a lot more subtly throughout. And this was very much like probably old school Howard Shore, where he just had like a computer and he was just like, and I was like, okay, that's definitely one way to to go. So like it was fun seeing Howard Shore back.
Yeah.
The whole time. It would have been funny to see Howard Shore in the movie, to be honest. So what you asked me this question about, like frustrating questions versus interesting questions, and you said it in relation to this movie. So do you feel like this movie asked a lot of interesting questions, a lot of frustrating questions, or a good combination of both?
It's probably a combination of both.
Did I help to clarify any of the frustrating questions?
Maybe. I mean, if you're right about the doctor. But then it's like, why didn't I pick that up from seeing the movie? Mm-hmm.
Which is what makes it a frustrating question in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, well, if that's the case, then why didn't... Yeah. I've definitely fallen into that rabbit hole. What other frustrating questions did you have?
Who are those two women? What are they... What are they about?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question, and it also made me think about the when you were talking about themes, the idea of government prevention of causing changes, because like the new vice department is like, no, we can't have this thing, and it's like, yeah, but as Viggo Mortensen becomes more and more like, no, this guy makes sense, you know, this sort of radicalization doesn't, but how humans are going to be progressing does make sense. Why are we trying to hold on to the old when we've already compromised certain things? Government intervention type stuff I thought was also interesting. That's a good question about the two of them. You could read it two ways. I thought that they were like government agents, but it's also possible that, you know, when the people who started eating plastic, they knew that they were going to go down the plastic eating route because they started having trouble swallowing. You know, Scott Speedman talks about how he like tried everything, you know, change the sleep pattern, make sure that his sleeping cycle is right, use the chair, change the chair parameters. He tried everything, and then he finally got the surgery that allowed him to eat plastic, and so he was able to process the food and then suddenly find relief. So you could read it as they were either assassins of the government that the new vice wasn't sure about, or you could read them as well, if everyone starts eating plastic, then our chair company goes out of business. So we need to eliminate the people who are doing this so that we can continue to keep our chairs and our beds as like the way people live, so we can keep our business going.
I don't know, man.
It's probably the corporation, like they're corporate assassins is probably the answer, but it's a good question.
But why do they talk like that?
Because they're bad actors. I'm just kidding. I don't know. That I don't know. Because it's a David Cronenberg and he has to have some kind of awkward people in it in the future. Because that's how people talk in the future, Gabe. That's a good frustrating question. I don't know.
We all talk like aliens in the future.
Why did Viggo Mortensen's accent go in and out throughout the movie? That was the thing that stuck out to me. I was like, why is his accent like semi-inconsistent? I figured it was just a Viggo Mortensen thing where he's like, the more subtle my accent.
Well, I think he's been doing movies in other languages recently, so maybe he's slowly losing control.
Oh my god.
He's becoming Raleigh Beckett.
It was just like the experience of having a consistent accent in Green Book was too much for him.
I wonder if he wishes he could take back Green Book.
I mean, he was nominated, so probably not.
But he seems like a very high-minded person.
I bet that was the movie he did because he was like, my money's running low. I guess I need to do another movie. That's the only thing I can think of is like his money was running low. So I was like, all right, what's this commercial fodder? Maybe I can make something of it. Or he was just very charmed by Nick Vallelonga's son. And he's like, this isn't racist.
Again, back to the charming racist with a heart of gold archetype.
It's on his bucket list. He's like when he was in Witness and making his bucket list of movies, he's like, I want to play a charming racist with a heart of gold. Instant Academy Award. But he didn't say the N-word enough, so he didn't get it.
He didn't go full Tim Roth.
I was going to say he didn't go full Sam Rockwell.
Or Sam Rockwell, either one. It's probably more exciting for Tim Roth, though, because he's British.
Yeah, he's like, I can make fun of these Americans by doing this. Whereas with Sam Rockwell, it's just like, we just don't advise doing this. With Tim Roth, he can at least hide behind his nationality.
Well, it's like, I think it's more like, I get to be an American and a racist, where it's with Sam Rockwell, it's like, I get to be a racist, but I'm already American.
Sam Rockwell is just like, I got to be myself again. I'm just kidding. We love you, Sam Rockwell. You were great in The Bad Guys.
What was that one like Odd Couple movie he was in with? It was like Viola Davis or something, where it's like she's black and he's racist, and together they're gonna fight injustice or something.
I think it didn't come out. Like it was stopped due to
being stupid.
No, COVID.
Oh.
It's my guess. Let's see. Hollywood. Where's his filmography? There we go. Sam Rockwell filmography, because he's been around forever. No, it's not. The Best of Enemies. It did come out.
Oh,
with Taraji P. Henson.
Taraji P. Henson. That's right.
Oh my God! It was released on April. It was released on my birthday. Critical receptions, 53% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's probably higher.
Average rating of 6 out of 10. Best of Enemies has the best of intentions, ha ha ha, but they're derailed by a problematic perspective and disappointing lack of insight.
I mean, it's literally an Odd Couple movie.
I bet she's like, I wonder if it's like Taraji P. Henson's character is like the Sidney Poitier, impossibly perfect black activist whose like one problem is she doesn't spend enough time with her children. And then Sam Rockwell is just like a person, but he likes to say the N-word a lot more, and he's also part of the KKK. Oh, I'm looking at the plot. During the voting, all the issues passed, coming down to the final issue of desegregation. One by one, the voters vote. Anne votes for it, and CP, Sam Rockwell's character, surprises everyone votes for it as well after realizing the KKK is hateful. It's all about
I'm telling
the
you, man,
friends
it's
we made along
it's
the way.
It's the worst odd couple movie imaginable. She's black, he's racist, and together they're gonna like. Who the fuck comes up with this shit?
Oh my god! It was based off of a book.
It's based off of real life. Probably
I wonder
very loosely, but based
should we
off
do
of
a
real life nonetheless.
You do a book report. How the Best of Enemies book is different than the movie.
Oh, don't make me suffer through that twice.
Wait, did you watch it?
No. But like, if you read the book and watch the movie, you have to suffer through it twice.
Well, I feel like the book is more nuanced. Whereas in the movie, they're like, we got to make them all. We got to high concept it.
I don't know, man. Books aren't always nuanced.
That's true.
Have you ever seen a James Patterson book before?
Who's the author who wrote the book? Maybe it's like, oh, they don't have any criticisms. They don't have any criticism.
Yeah.
Oh, well, the two people definitely. Oh my gosh. So like Taraji P. Henson and Sam Rockwell look nothing like the people who are the main characters of this
makes
book.
sense.
Like they should have gone with who's another? Oh, they should have gone with Michael Madsen and Octavia Spencer, and then it would have been perfect. That would have sold the book. Because Michael Madsen, he could go full racist, right? He could do that in a movie and be fine, right? He doesn't need to rehabilitate his career. I guess the other person would be Scott Tom Sizemore.
He could go. Michael Madsen could go full racist in a movie, and people are like, "Oh yeah, that's Michael Madsen."
It's just Michael Madsen doing his thing. Yeah. So anyway,
like, not that he's racist or anything. I think it's just easy to buy him as a racist.
Yeah, I think he's like genuinely like a pretty nice guy, is my guess.
He just has one of those faces
and voices too.
Yeah.
Let me squeak out all my lines. Cast me in the Many Saints of Newark. Okay, sure, why not? The movie that no one saw. So, Crimes of the Future. Do you have anything else to say, since we got derailed by Viggo Mortensen's accents? Yeah, I wasn't sure where you'd come down on it, because I know like Austin was like, I was just really bored by it. And I was like, I don't know, I found all of the actual like thriller plot stuff kind of interesting and kind of engaging, and like the sort of like mystery, like, oh, well, what is this kid? Why is he special? And like, what are these people eating? What is with this purple candy bar? So I found all of that stuff interesting and relatively satisfyingly explained. And the sort of like environmentalist message of like, that is kind of a cool idea of like, you know, we're evolving to eat all of the stuff that we've like contaminated the world with. Oh, that's kind of fascinating. And like odd that the government wants to shut that down. All right, Canadian David Cronenberg, tell me more.
It's not the only thing the Canadian government is shutting down. Let's get political. What's funny is like, once again, the government of Canada will just hand Cronenberg a bag of money to make a movie.
Yeah.
David Cronenberg's like, hey, Canada, I need money. Here you go, Cronenberg. We love you. You're our best boy.
My favorite is he's like, yeah, people complain all the time about like the Canadian government giving me money, and like I keep topping myself with how disgusting I am and all of this stuff. It's like, yeah, like that's, you know, people who complain about it, like the Canadian government can, you know, create new ratings to put my movies under so that younger people can't watch it. But at the end of the day, they're making a lot of money, and the Canadian government still gives me the money to do it.
Yep.
So like, I mean, whose responsibility is it, really? Like, God, tell me about it.
Props to the Canadian government for that one thing only.
I mean, I don't know.
Although we did have to go to Greece to get a decent chunk of financing, it looks like.
There's a number of weird things that the Canadian government makes Cronenberg do to jump, like weird hoops to jump through. Because he was talking about maps of the stars, and it's like, you look at that cast and you're like, oh yeah, there really aren't that many American actors. And it turns out
he hire Canadian actors for it.
He can only hire one American actor for any movie that he's in sort of like a starring role. So that one American actor in this case, I guess, is Kristen Stewart or Scott Speedman, one of the two.
Are they counting Viggo as like Dutch or something?
Because he's Dutch. He has Dutch citizenship. So that was the big thing. Was Julianne Moore was she's American in Maps to the Stars or whatever. She's American, but she has American British citizenship. So as long as the person has citizenship in a different country, you can cast them. But I think Kristen Stewart would be the only one.
Yeah, well, it's like all the bit parts are Greek and Canadian actors.
Yeah, Scott Speedman's Canadian. He's going to be the next Wolverine. Like, you just go down the list and it's like, oh yeah, that's an interesting, because like what James Woods is like also Canadian, I think, which is why he was in Videodrome.
No way.
I think he's
There's
like
no
American.
way James Woods is Canadian. He's American. He's from Utah.
Oh, okay. Well, that explains so much. All right. Well, I wonder what like see, now I need to go in for what is it? The Dead Zone. Like, I'm interested in looking at the Dead Zone and seeing like the breakdown of the cast, because like who is the
Well, it's probably more recent that those stipulations came into place.
Maybe. It's weird also that I just assume anyone who's starring in David Cronenberg's movies are Canadian. I don't know.
Like Crash is full of American actors, for example. Videodrome is full of American actors.
Yeah, I'm looking at The Fly, and The Fly's got a bunch of American actors. So yeah, it might be a more recent thing. Or like they weren't necessarily financed by the Canadian government, but now that they're like his really personal, because like the Dead Zone would have been financed by like, 20th Century Fox, which The Fly was. But so maybe that's what it is.
Although actually, Crash does have a fair share of actors who I didn't know were Canadian. Mm-hmm. Elias Koteas is Canadian.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wow. He should be the next Wolverine. I just want a Canadian Wolverine. Like it's fine. Hugh Jackman, great. Like whatever. But like, come on. Like, there's so many Canadian actors out there. There's got to be one who isn't Keanu. Like, I'd be fine with Keanu Reeves as Wolverine too. Like, he's Canadian.
Yeah. No.
Like, hey, bub, don't go there. I'm the best at what I do, and what I do isn't very nice, dude.
Anyway. Yeah, I didn't know Elias Koteas was. What about Holly Hunter?
I somehow doubt that she's Canadian.
Who else? Rosanna Arquette, right? She's also the... Let's see. I don't have the cast list brought up in front of me, but... So on Mount Cronenberg more, as far as like his films, where do you kind of put this?
I mean, I don't think it's on Mount Cronenberg more, if you can only have like 4 movies on it.
All right, well, in that case, like as far as the sort of like the filmography...
I mean, I think it's kind of middle of the pack. Mm-hmm. It's, not as good as his best. It's kind of in line with his more, like decent, but nothing to write home about, stuff from the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a low witness. Like, it's still got a lot going for it. It's still worth watching. But yeah, I mean, it's, it's more interesting than good, I would say.
He's one of those guys that's like Soderbergh, where it's just like if he comes out with something, it's always worth looking into.
Yeah, I think because for very different reasons, obviously. But yes, I would definitely put him in that category.
Yeah, I do. I actually like, one of the things I do like is like, I noticed this with Existence, which is a very weird and difficult movie to watch. Cronenberg's always good at putting out ideas or like things to think about in a way that is that it's like, this seems like a large concept that you should probably explore in like a 2.5 hour movie, and yet he still approaches it, puts it out there, and even discusses and dives into it in a manageable time frame.
Yeah,
so that's one thing I
like
think is really
allergic
interesting
to
about
movies
him.
over 2 hours.
it's I mean, it's kind of like Woody Allen is the same way. Woody Allen's movies are always like very short, and I appreciate that. You know, I know Woody Allen. We're not supposed to talk about him, but like I can talk about it with David Cronenberg because it's like he makes movies. You know, he makes digestible, cinema content. He's not like Spielberg or Scorsese, whose runtimes just balloon out of control. And I really do appreciate that. I think that's that's a really cool characteristic of a filmmaker.
Yeah. Brevity is it's a nice quality to have.
I'm trying to think of like. Also, like I know how we talked about like with The Irishman, it's like Scorsese doing his greatest hits. Mm-hmm. You know, I felt a little bit like that with Crimes of the Future. It's like I'm gonna make the most David Cronenberg movie, as sort of like a like I'm getting old. I won't have many opportunities to do this anymore. I want to make the movie that everyone thinks I should make. And I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that his sister Denise Cronenberg, who does like the costume design for every single one of his movies, didn't do the costume design here. Unfortunately, she passed away. No. But one, nepotism. We should address it, but also too, it's just like that was one of the signatures of Cronenberg's movies for so long, so I felt like I should mention that. With that said, do you have anything else you want to talk about on Crimes of the Future?
Nope.
No? All right. Well, if anyone did want to write us a message about how much they both loved, hated, thought was boring, or thought was disgusting about Crimes of the Future, how would they do that, Gabe?
They could reach us at video@underthewheels.com or like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that shit on Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or just visit our website, underthewheels.com.
Yeah. And thanks again, Mike, for the music. If you can stomach it, go see Crimes of the Future. If you can't, you can always wait till streaming. You can wait till it becomes a crime of the future.
I mean, movies are always better that way. And the theater will be empty, so you don't have to worry.
That's also true. And we don't know how many new David Cronenberg movies we're going to be getting, too.
No, the dude's so old.
79. Poor guy. He looks old, too. But yeah. With that said, I am Matthew.
And I'm Gabe.
And you have just been Under the Wheels. I don't even know where to go from there. I feel like Tony Stark. Like, I don't even know what to say.
I got nothing. Well, it's like screenwriting lesson, Shane Black. If your character's got nothing to say, they shouldn't say anything.
It's like we learned this shit in Bambi. By the way, I saw Bambi for the first time. Like, not the first time ever, but the first time in probably 28 years. You know what, dude? You know what? It was pretty good. But I was thinking about like screenwriting, like scripts and stuff, and we had talked about Joss Whedon being like super, like you have to say everything in his script. There's a line in the first Avengers movie that I absolutely hate, and it's like Tony Stark's like, tell him I'm not in right now, and then he like lands and he's like, I'm actually outside, and I'm like, what the fuck is that line even? Like, not only that, but like they cut between like him coming down and sitting down, and then like his armor comes off and he like has this smug look on his face, like, I'm actually outside. I'm like, why is this line in here? We know he's outside. We can see him outside.
I don't know. I can't. You could put a gun to my head and tell me to explain some of Joss Whedon's choices, and I probably couldn't do it.
I wouldn't want to.
Same for Shane Black.
It seems more okay with Shane Black because, like, as far as I know, Shane Black isn't like a serial cheater and also an asshole to his actors, from my understanding.
I'm separating the art from the artist, Matthew. I'm saying that the art is questionable, regardless of their personal characteristics.
God, I think the actual answer is like, as long as you keep Shane Black in a little budget box, he's fine.
Yeah.
He's fine. He's not like, he might even do something good, but at the very least, he's fine. But if you let him out of that budget box, you know what? Just you might as well just burn the money.
It's amazing that he was able to make The Nice Guys
And then Predator, and then like what?
just
the
hasn't
Predator.
done anything good before or since.
You know what? My boy Val Kilmer entertaining in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So.
I was gonna say Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is really good as well.
What else? Was that the only thing he did before Iron Man 3?
Maybe.
I almost
So
wrote
remember
Shane
when Iron Man
Black.
3 came out, they were like, "Oh, Shane Black, he and Robert Downey Jr. were together in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. It'll be like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang." And then it was the worst movie ever made.
I mean, yeah, you're right. Like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, pretty decent. And then Iron Man 3. And then The Nice Guys, pretty decent. So who knows? Maybe like his next film will be like pretty decent. No,
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I hope he waits a while because there's only so much like smarminess that the world can handle at one time, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's also, you know, we say like we hope he waits a while. The last movie he made was in 2018. It's just because like pandemic has, it's like 2018, not that long ago, but also because of pandemic, it feels a lot longer, and yet it is a lot longer because 2018 to 2002 is like, you know, he was cranking out, you know, Iron Man 3, Nice Guys, Predator that was all within, you know, 5 to 6 year span.
Oh, 2012, you mean?
2013 was Iron Man 3, and then Predator was 2018.
Yeah.
The Predator.
You said 2002.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. But yeah, so like it's just like with David Cronenberg, like this is his first movie in 8 years. It
Yep.
feels like
Well,
it,
'cause
but
he
also
retired.
God.
He's semi-retired.
Oh, is he?
I know, like he retired after Maps to the Stars, and then this is his comeback.
God, I mean, I don't blame him. Like Maps to the Stars, not amazing, and also like no one saw it.
Yeah, I mean, well, Viggo said that he basically quit the business for a little bit because he couldn't get any funding.
Canada finally
Trudeau
said
comes
no.
in, no more Cronenberg movies.
Wait, but why? It's like because I'm French Canadian. That's why.
No more going
Enough of
outside, and no more Cronenberg. All the truckers are driving to the Capitol. Bring Cronenberg back.
We're pro Cronenberg. You guys, that'd be
We're
hilarious.
anti-mask and pro Cronenberg.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if like they were like, we're pro Cronenberg, we will finance his film, like a Daily Wire movie, and the film is just an insulting like it just insults all of the truck drivers.
Oh man.
Like you guys asked for it. I did the same with the Canadian government when they gave me money.
Yeah. So. Well, it's crazy that it's crazy the Daily Wire is now a movie studio.
That's at least attempting to be. I mean, they didn't produce that one Thomas Jane like school shooting movie. It's Die Hard in a school.
Oh.
They should re-release that now. I bet it'd be a hit. But like they didn't.
That should be just that. They should just have a special channel on TV that plays it on repeat.
Oh my god! They just have it for free on dailywire.com. But like they didn't produce that. They just distributed it, which means that someone independently financed it and was like, someone's definitely gonna buy this.
Well, I feel like Daily Wire is more media savvy than like. They know well enough not to make that movie.
But not well enough to not distribute that movie.
Yeah,
is the weird thing.
They don't know well enough not to try and make some money off of it.
I don't know. I feel like they want to follow like the A24 model, and I think it's hilarious. I'm interested to see where it goes. That's where I'm at in life. Like, I'm not gonna fight back against it. I'm not gonna support it. I'm gonna see how it goes with the world's best actress Gina Carano headlining their movies. Action movies are expensive, so if they're talking about doing a project that's like an action movie, Like, they better be pot committed.
Finished.